Hey guys, Luke here, and so in today's video we're going to talk about running out your lines upwind or downwind and which one's better. It's a controversial topic. A lot of people have opinions on this. Do they run their lines downwind? Do they run them upwind? And with some of the videos that we've made in the past, you know, people they write comments on our channel saying, oh no, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. And so we thought we'd make a video today that is talking about the objective. So what's the objective of running out your bar and lines? What are some of the advantages of running your bar and lines in certain directions? And also, why would you run your bar and lines out in certain circumstances? So why would you run your bar and lines upwind or downwind or a crosswind? So we're down here and we're in Cape Verde. You can see we're on a beautiful beach today. We've just had an awesome wave session and we've come back and we thought, let's make this video. The beers are already flowing behind us here at the beach bar. We're at the Robinson Hotel and they've been looking after us riders for the GKL World Tour event, so super big ups to them for looking after us. And we're going to go and enjoy the bar in a moment, but we thought let's make this video, let's get it out to you guys, like what is best, upwind or downwind lines. So first off, let's talk about the objective of running out your bar and lines. So what is the point of running out your bar and lines? Obviously, the number one point is that you do it correctly, okay? That it actually works, so that when you connect your bar and lines to your kite, there's no twists in it, there's no tangles in it, and you position yourself for a safe launch. That's the objective, that you have a safe launch and that nothing goes wrong. And ultimately, you can run out your bar and lines upwind, downwind, crosswind, or around other kites, around trees, whatever you have to do, as long as you do it correctly, and when you have your launch, you position yourself properly, or your lines are connected to the kite correctly, then it's going to be fine, okay? And so in this video, I think one of the biggest things is that sometimes I run my bar and lines upwind, sometimes I run them downwind, and sometimes I run them straight across wind. And so one of the reasons, let's talk about why you would choose either direction, and then we'll get into some of the advantages. So on this beach right here, you can see big open sandy beach. There's no one else around, and so when I'm on a beach like this and I want to run out my bar and lines, I run them downwind. Big clear open area, there's nobody here, and you know, I can run my lines straight downwind without interrupting anybody else. On Kite Beach, which is just over the other side, where there might be 50 plus kites on the beach on any given day, maybe you don't have this much space, and so in that circumstance you might need to run your lines across the wind. So a lot of the times on skinny beaches, one of our beaches in Canada, it's like that, all the kites are stacked up the beach, and so you run your lines across the wind. Everyone runs their lines across the wind. And so maybe you're in a really tight area and you have to run your bar and lines upwind because your kite, you know, it's safer to have your kite in that area to launch. So an example for that would be one of our other places we kite in Canada. It's really, really rocky. And so what we do there is, you know, we have to have the kite in a certain position, and then we run our bar and lines in a certain way, and then we have to position ourselves for launch, okay? So really you want to assess the conditions and choose which one works for you. But I would say that every independent kiter should be able to. You should understand how to run out your bar and lines upwind, downwind, and a crosswind, because you never know when one of those circumstances is going to show up. You never know when you're going to be on a crowded beach, and you need to know to run your lines across the wind. You need to know how to connect them safely. So let's talk about some of the advantages, and then I'll give you a couple of tips actually for what you can do in each circumstance. Downwind line setup is said to be the safest, and when you're a beginner, if it's your first day and you're taking the lesson, you'll definitely run your bar and lines downwind. And I would say if you're learning, definitely get in the habit of running out your bar and lines downwind. So what are the advantages is that when you run your bar and lines downwind, you have an opportunity to do what's called a pre-flight check. So you can actually hold the lines and pull them side side, make sure they're all clear and there's no twist in it. That's a lot harder to do when you're upwind and almost impossible to do when you're a crosswind. So that gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I've connected my bar and lines correctly. Okay, I can see there's no twists in them, I can see they're not tangled, I can see they're connected to the right sides. And so that pre-flight check is really important for people that are learning, because maybe they've made a mistake when they're connecting their bar and lines. Secondly, as you start to move into position for your launch, what will happen is you're more likely to be downwind of the kite as you pull tension on the lines. And so it's said to be safer, because what's really happening is if you pull tension on the lines when you're downwind, nothing really changes for the kite. And the helper, the person that's holding onto your kite, they're okay as well. But if you run your bar and lines upwind and then pull tension on them and somebody's holding onto that kite, then the kite's really going to be very hot, right? A hot launch, and what it's going to do is it's going to load up with a lot of power because it's in the power zone while you pull tension on the bar. And so the downwind setup is said to be safer really for those reasons. You get the pre-flight check and then you're downwind as you start to move into position. Now, the one disadvantage that some people maybe find a little bit confusing to start with is that we're always riding out with our bar on the left, red on the left, okay? But when we put our bar and lines downwind, we sort of sit it down on the right to connect it. So that's probably the only disadvantage. It's not a big problem though, and it's just something to keep in mind that when you pick up the bar, you always remember to pick it up red on the left, okay? Because that's another problem that some people have is you see them, they run their bar and lines downwind, they pick up the bar, they get into position to launch. I saw this just the other day on Kite Beach actually. The guy's holding the bar on completely the wrong side and he's trying to launch it. He's pulling really hard on the bar and the kite's trying to crash into the ground because he's got the bar completely around the wrong way. So definitely dangerous, and to keep in mind when running your bar and lines downwind, pick up the bar, red's always on the left. Okay, so let's talk about upwind. So what are the advantages of running your bar and lines upwind? The one advantage I'd say is that to me it sort of seems easier at the start. When I was learning, I was sort of thought, you know, okay, I put the bar and lines down like this, the kite's going down here, I can visualize how the lines are going to go, and I know it's going to fly like that. And so that was probably the only advantage that I found like that, unless you're in a tight situation. And I don't necessarily run my bar and lines upwind very often anymore, mainly always downwind for me. One of the things to keep an eye on, really critical if you're going to run your bar and lines upwind, is to make sure you get into position, because when, like we talked about, you can't add any tension to your bar. So let me just show you quickly what I mean. So when we're launching, we know that we launch perpendicular to the wind, so that's the wind direction. We need to, if this is our kite sitting here on the sand, then we need to position ourselves directly perpendicular to it, so either standing over here or standing over here in order to safely launch our kite. So when your bar and lines are up here and you start to move into position, if you don't go far enough and you put tension on the bar here, the kite's going to load up with a lot of power, and it's going to load up pretty hot. It might unbalance you, pull you onto the ground, even worse, or it might, what typically happens is it's really aggressive for the person that's holding onto your kite, because all of a sudden it loads up and it might even knock them over. So make sure you always walk all the way around. If you're new to kite surfing, and you can watch our other video for the perfect position to launch your kite, but if you're new to kite surfing, this is the orientation that's required. So come down the beach, draw your line in the sand. Okay, this is the wind direction today. Where's your kite? Make sure you position yourself across it, because you would be surprised how many people are still getting that wrong. And what I've noticed is, even with the downwind setup, so you've got your bar down here and you start to move across, what some people tend to do is they sort of Miranda across like this, so there's no tension on the lines, and they sort of just walk over here where they think it's going to be, and then they load up, and again it's in hot launch mode. Okay, so even if you're running your bar and downwind, make sure you sort of are really conscious about where you are in the window. You're perpendicular across the wind to your kite, and then you're going to be positioned correctly, because this sort of circles back to, you know, what's the purpose of having of running out your bar and lines? It's to do it safely, and it doesn't really matter which way. Even if you run your bar and lines across here, because it's a crowded beach, you connect all your bar and lines from downwind side, and then it's just sort of across. When you pick up that bar and lines, you have to remember, what was the main thing that I needed to do here? Even if I couldn't do a pre-flight check, okay, well I did it the way that I always do it. So I know that the bar and lines are connected correctly. I know that the lines are on the right side of it. I know that I am slightly downwind, but I need to move to this position if I want to have a safe launch. Okay, I know that I picked up the bar and lines with red on the left. Okay, these are the main things. And so just be really conscious of that. If you have to run out your bar and lines a couple of times, I always, when I'm running my bar, it doesn't matter which direction, any direction, I will always go back and I do it twice. So I always run out my outside lines, and then I go back and I run out my center lines. And that gives me a second chance to say, okay, oh, I made a mistake here. I've got the line on the wrong side, or something's still tangled. So some people try and do it all in their forehand, you know, like this, and they walk forward, and then, but for me, it's too prone to mistakes to do that. So I always run out my sidelines, put that out, and then I run out my center lines, make sure, and then I know that they're completely separate. Even if it's across the wind like this, okay, you can still make sure, because you can walk it twice and say, okay, yeah, that one's over there, that one's over there, these ones go into the center, and just getting a rhythm of you know, a system that you use every single time. So how do you do it? Do you connect the outside lines first and then the center lines first, and try and create that same system for yourself, so that no matter what way you're running it, you know, okay, this is how it works. And you can watch our other videos for actually how to set up downwind or upwind, because if you're thinking, well, I don't even know how to run my bar and lines upwind, then go and watch those other videos. But this is just a little bit of information about which one you should do, because I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions. I'd certainly agree, if you're a beginner, really try and commit to learning downwind. But as you start to get some skills and a bit of competence, then what you want to do is start to think about, okay, if I'm on a crowded beach, what am I going to do? Okay, you don't want to have to rely on that I can only run my bar and lines one way, and if it's not like that, then I don't know what I'm doing. So make sure you sort of educate yourself a little bit, double check it, move across the wind, and start to make that system for yourself. Okay, look, I think that's about it for this video. A few thoughts there. Of course, do the system that works for you, assess your conditions, set up your bar and lines safely, and you're going to have a great time. Thanks guys, see you in the next video.